Welcome in on a Wednesday, everybody. I'm Reed Cowan. Together in the Tar Heel state, the Republican presidential ticket on the road offering a counterpoint to the Democrats' big show in Chicago. And we'll be live on day 3 of the DNC, the Democratic National Convention, focusing on your freedoms. This is CBS News 24/7. Let's go. All right, we're watching this right off the top. Breaking news in that search for passengers who went down when a yacht sunk off the coast of Italy. Here's your headline at this hour. When we look at this video, crews in the water say they have recovered 4 bodies. Right now, 2 are still missing. That yacht went down after a tornado flipped and sunk the vessel in just 2 minutes' time. 15 people rescued from the wreckage Monday. They are alive, but right now, dive teams say tough going in the water. Officials add they only have about 12 minutes at a time underwater before they have to resurface and regroup. We'll watch this one closely. Our live monitors now take us to North Carolina, where Republican vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance is speaking at a rally right now. This is in the town of Asheboro, which is about 80 miles outside of the Queen City of Charlotte, North Carolina. By the way, former President Donald Trump will also speak at what will be his first outdoor rally since the attempted assassination in Pennsylvania last month. This time, you will see Donald Trump speaking to voters behind bulletproof glass. Now, meanwhile, Democrats are amassing in Chicago for day 3 of the Democratic National Convention. A former president last night and a former president tonight. CBS News senior White House correspondent Weijia Jiang live on the stream with us right now. Today's theme is all about personal freedoms. Weijia.
Reed, that's right. The theme is a fight for our freedoms. This comes off of last night as the second gentleman portrayed his wife as a joyful warrior. So tonight we expect to hear a lot about how the vice president would fight for freedoms. As you may remember, it's really difficult for a vice president to break through on any issue. And when Roe v. Wade was overturned, she really had her moment in the sun and never got out of that because she was the main spokesperson and official on the White House's behalf, traveling the country, talking about reproductive freedoms and the women's right to choose. And so that message will carry on, in addition to the threat of democracy, which we have already heard a lot about from this campaign, and specifically from the vice president, who talks at length about what personal freedoms could be at risk if democracy is not preserved. And she claims if the former president, Donald Trump, were to get a second term. And so we will hear much more about those themes. But tonight, Reed, is really a big night for her running mate, Governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz. Tonight is his big dance, his big waltz, if you will, to have an opportunity to introduce himself to the country. Of course, we have seen little snippets. We have seen sort of his personality come out a little bit. But tonight is his night. He is the keynote speaker. He will be introduced by former President Bill Clinton, which is a tradition to introduce the vice presidential nominee. And we'll really hear more from his personal story and more about how he would fight for freedoms, how he would fight for Americans if he were to go to the White House. And so I think this is a really important night to try to answer that question of who he is and how he will complement the vice president if she were to become president.
All right, I see what you did there, Weijia Jiang. The Walz waltz. That's pretty good. Hey, quickly, I want to ask you a second question. You were at the Harris rally in Wisconsin last night. That crowd also very energized, as was the candidate. What kind of heat did you sense there in that arena?
So the reason why this matters, Reed, when we talk about the enthusiasm in the arena, when we talk about the more than 15,000 people that came out, when we talk about all the young people who were having their own dance party inside there, along with the ones here in Chicago, the reason why that matters is because the campaign hopes that energy turns into action and turns into votes on Election Day. And that's why they're trying to ride this momentum. But for sure, it was quite the scene yesterday. You know that the vice president's remarks in Milwaukee were actually beamed here live to Chicago. So there was a lot of beaming going on, kind of like how you beam us to your huge studio every day on those big screens. And so it was joyful, it was exciting. The question, though, I think that's outstanding is how they are going to keep that going when they don't have a convention going on, when they don't have a rally every single night. We do know she's going to be traveling a lot, the vice president that is, to try to keep up that momentum until November 5th.
Well, our big screens are always better because of you. Weijia Jiang, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Okay, so that is the picture inside Convention Hall. Outside, scenes like the ones you see here over my shoulder. This is near the Israeli consulate, where police arrested pro-Palestinian protesters last night. Here's the Chicago Police Department chief and the deputy mayor of Chicago.
We had a group that showed up, and they showed up with the intent on committing acts of violence, vandalism. That was their intent. As the Chicago Police Department, we did everything that we could to de-escalate that situation. But there's only so much de-escalation that you can attempt before it becomes excessive repetition. And in excessive repetition, you continue to say things to people until they stop believing that you're going to do anything about it.
Last night wasn't a protest. To call last night a protest would be disrespectful to people who have actually protested for things that have moved societies forward across the country. That wasn't what we had last night. What we had people who came down to the city to cause harm, to wreak havoc, and they were met with the best trained police department in the country.
CBS News correspondent Roxana Saberi is watching protesters' moves once again, live today with us. Okay, so you heard him there say this was not a protest. To call it a protest is an insult to those who honestly protest around the country and who have. What was it, and why did they make those arrests yesterday?
Yeah, Reed, Superintendent Snelling also said police arrested about 55 to 60 people. He said most of them were protesters, though there were also 3 journalists among those arrested. He didn't have the charges yet that those journalists faced. He said that some of the charges that the protesters faced included disorderly conduct and battery to police officers. He said while his department respects First Amendment rights, last night posed what he called a danger to the city, which is why he said this wasn't just simply protests. He said some of the people out there had actually intended to fight with his officers. He said his officers allowed them to speak for some time despite being unpermitted, but when those people out there, the protesters, later refused to negotiate and leave, and also he said called some of his female officers nasty, sexually explicit things, and he said physically confronted some officers. He said that's when his officers decided to conduct mass arrests. So what we saw, Reed, out there was dozens of pro-Palestinian demonstrators. They were gathered outside the Israeli consulate, which is about 2 miles east of here. We're in front of the United Center where delegates have been meeting. Many of them had their faces covered, waving Palestinian flags and chanting Free Palestine. Eventually, some pro-Israeli protesters also showed up, but the police kept them apart. And that's when the atmosphere started to get tense, when some pro-Palestinian protesters tried to move past the police to march. Some stopped traffic momentarily, but officers in riot gear kept walling them in, and that's when we witnessed some arrests. The protest was organized by the group Behind Enemy Lines, and a volunteer attorney for the National Lawyers Guild told the Chicago Sun-Times today that the protesters were, quote, surrounded and corralled. It was nearly impossible to leave. Reed?
Roxana Saberi, thank you so much. They're live from Chicago watching protesters and their moves. All right, so we showed you a little earlier Senator J.D. Vance speaking at that rally in North Carolina. We've had a chance to grab that sound and turn it around for you. Let's listen in.
It is good to be in the great state of North Carolina. Thank you all. Now calm down, please, calm down. You guys put something crazy in the water here in North Carolina. Well, I have a message. In 75 days, we are going to take this country back. We're going to elect Donald J. Trump, and it's going to start right here with the great people of North Carolina. Now, I don't know if y'all saw, but Today is the third day of the Democratic National Coronation. Excuse me, I said coronation, I meant convention. Sorry for the confusion, but you know, conventions normally are about nominating people who actually win elections. And Kamala Harris hasn't won a single vote for the Democratic Party, and yet they're going to make her nominee. Now, I watched it last night, and Democrats, they think they've cracked the code for how to appeal to normal Americans. Did you watch last night? Are they going to change their policy? No. But now they're distributing camo hats with Kamala Harris's name on them. That's their strategy for appealing to rural voters and veterans, is a camo hat with Kamala Harris's name on it. Now, you know what I think would appeal to rural voters and veterans, Kamala? Not having a running mate who lies about his service record. Why don't we try that? You see, Tim Walz says that he served in a war zone. And it turns out the closest he ever got to war is when he let rioters burn down the city of Minneapolis under his watch in the summer of 2020. Remember that? Now let's just reflect, now that we're in day 3 of the Democrat National Convention, how bizarre it is that they're doing some of the things that they're doing. Normally, conventions, they celebrate nominees who are elected by the people. And let's remind ourselves, how many votes has Kamala Harris won in the Democratic primary? 0. 0. That's exactly right. 10 million illegal aliens, but 0 votes. That is the record of Kamala Harris. Now remember, the party bosses installed Kamala Harris because they can control her. That's all this is about. Her agenda is not an agenda for the American people. It's an agenda for the people who have gotten rich off the decline of this country, and we are not going to take it. Are we? Now remember, it was her donors, it was Kamala Harris's donors who got rich when we shipped millions of manufacturing jobs off to China and other countries. Americans, we got poor. Her donors got rich when America printed trillions of dollars to fund her green scam policies, but Americans, we paid higher prices for groceries and housing because of it. And now her party wants more power, and the way they're going to do it is that she wants to give all those illegal aliens the right to vote. But out here in the state of North Carolina, we believe the only people who get to vote in our elections are the people who have a right to be here, not illegal aliens, Kamala Harris. And this November, starting right here in the great state of North Carolina, we're going to send a message to the corrupt leaders of this country. We do not need a president selected by power brokers. We need a president for the people, and that's why we're going to send Donald J. Trump back to the White House. There is so much at stake in this election. Think of everything that this country has endured over the last 4 years of Kamala Harris's broken leadership. Prices are up and wages down. Our borders are wide open, but we've had a lot of factories closing down. Fentanyl is available on every street corner from North Carolina to Wisconsin, but it is impossible for young Americans to find an affordable home to raise their families in. Now, Donald J. Trump represents something that so many in this country need right now, and I think it's important to recognize that we need hope in the United States of America. Hope that we can reignite this economy and bring back prosperity to American citizens. Hope that we can raise our kids in secure neighborhoods and safe streets. Hope that we can renew the patriotism that binds us as a country together, one nation under God. My friends, for a lot of us, for a lot of the people that we fight for, the American dream seems out of reach today, the most out of reach it's been in a generation. But in 75 days, we're going to save the dreams of every single American, and it will mark the beginning of the future all of us deserve, and we're going to do it together. Now, we're here to talk about national security today, and saving the American dream, let's be honest, it starts with peace. Peace in our neighborhoods, peace in our cities, and peace at the southern border. Lord willing, we bring back the leadership of Donald J. Trump, we're going to have peace all over the entire world. He did it once before, and I think he's going to do it again. Now, if we don't have safety for our families, if we don't have security for our country, we don't have anything. And I'm a firm believer that when we talk about national security starts right here at home, right here in the great state of North Carolina. And there's been no greater area where Kamala Harris has failed to deliver peace and national security than at the American southern border. It is a disgrace, my friends. I cannot believe how bad it is. Now, the media will lie to you and tell you that she was never the border czar. You heard that? Even though they all said she was the border czar for 3.5 years. And remember that as border czar, Kamala Harris has allowed a literal invasion of this country, more than 10 million illegal aliens, and she's refused to deport the people who are already here. So that makes about 25 million illegal aliens that are in this country right now. Now, our brave Border Patrol officers, they plead, they beg for her support. I was down there at the southern border and I saw it. Giant sections of President Trump's border wall sit right there, rusting, waiting to be installed, but she refuses to do her job. And you think it's bad now? If we give Kamala Harris a promotion and make her the President of the United States, the southern border is going to look like Walmart on Black Friday, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be no good, no fun at all. Now, while she offers amnesty for the people who've broken our laws, we have a different message. President Trump and I have a different message to all the criminal illegals who flooded across Kamala's wide open southern border. Pack your bags, because in 6 months, you are going home. Now, just weeks ago, I actually visited the southern border, which means that I've visited the southern border more than our borders are Kamala Harris. I saw where little girls are trafficked by the drug cartels, some of the most vile people in the world taking advantage of innocent little children and making money off of them. I met a rancher who endured violent criminals raiding his land. Just a rancher in Arizona trying to get by. And I see the desperation of families torn apart by the fentanyl and all the other...
All right, you've been listening to Senator J.D. Vance speaking at a rally in North Carolina. If you look at the lines on the left and the right-hand side of your screens, those lines delineate what is bulletproof glass. This is an outdoor rally. President Trump will also take to that podium. It's the first outdoor rally by the Republican ticket since that assassination attempt in Pennsylvania. J.D. Vance attacking his opponent and trying to draw a lot of differentiating items between his ticket and the Democratic ticket, offering counter-programming. What's really fascinating here is you heard J.D. Vance borrow the first few lines of the ancient and very popular quote by Lao Tzu, connecting peace in the world to peace in our cities and in our communities. Fascinating to see him lift those lines there in talking about the narrative. We'll continue to follow that and also more of the happenings there in North Carolina as Republicans make their appeal to voters there. When we come back, we'll expand our focus, bringing a story off the monitors from Italy. We'll be talking live to a reporter as that frantic search for any life in the waters continues after a yacht sunk. We'll be right back. More breaking news. Divers in Italy still searching the wreck of a mega yacht that sank in a powerful storm. Here's your update. 5 bodies now found, 1 person still missing. Now, there's a little bit of a satellite delay here, but with another body found since our broadcast began, we want to bring in BBC foreign correspondent Bethany Bell. Bethany, just 2 hours ago, there were 2 bodies that had been found. Now it's up to 5. Some rapidly changing developments there where you're standing there at the water's edge.
It is. It's been a grim afternoon here. We first got the news that 2 bodies had been discovered from the wreck, and I was able to see through a very powerful camera lens how divers appeared to be pulling a body up out of the water into a small boat, which they then brought into the harbour right behind me. And you can see the red tents that belong to all the rescue crews that have been working so painstakingly and carefully in very challenging conditions to try to locate the missing people. We know now that 5 people have died. 1 person is still unaccounted for, and we don't know yet officially the identities of the bodies that have been brought up out of the water. But it's been a very grim afternoon. One by one, these bodies have been put into ambulances and then driven away from the port, often with police cars, with sirens, taking them away from here. And the divers themselves have been struggling with extremely difficult conditions. They can go down, it takes a minute to get down to the bottom of the seabed. They can spend 8 to 10 minutes there before they have to come up again. But they're also using robots, remotely controlled vehicles to help them in their search.
Wow, families getting grim calls once again today. Bethany Bell, thank you so much for that report from the water's edge in Italy. Let's come back home right now, jumping the map to Texas, and temperatures there making life difficult for people living on the streets in San Antonio. So we can tell you nonprofits in communities there working overtime to try to help. In fact, we met Dawn. She's giving out water at her community center.
We have water hoses hooked up so that clients can access cool water and cool their body off. We offer showers. We have a cooler we set out that we put ice in every day.
Triple-digit temperatures expected throughout the week, and that's why we're bringing Zoe in. You can see in that video there, Zoe, people are just weary.
Oh, it's awful how much heat that they have seen, and it looks like later this week they might get a break. But today, likely going to be seeing more dozens of records being broken all across the Texas area. So that's something that we're going to continue to keep our eyes on. Texas dealing with excessive heat. A big cool down arrived for parts of the eastern United States, which is good news for them because they saw a lot of flooding. They saw a lot of severe weather. Now they're feeling more like fall. But it's Texas that's dealing with the excessive heat, and over into New Mexico as well, where dozens, like I said, of records are going to be broken. Excessive heat warnings, heat advisories in place basically across the entirety of Texas. We are going to be seeing places like Austin, San Antonio, going to be breaking those records with temperatures well above 100, 106, 107. Luckily, the heat indices aren't going to be much higher than those temperatures, maybe getting up to 110, but it's not going to be crazy humid. That's good news. However, heat index and heat risk is going to be very high. It's really just centered over Texas, though. The rest of the country is not necessarily dealing with nearly as abundant of heat, and we're going to continue to see a cooling trend over the next couple of days. So yes, New Mexico today, you are still dealing with quite a lot of heat, but by tomorrow, that heat kind of begins to back off, and by Friday, you'll finally begin to see the return of more seasonable conditions. That area of higher risk for heat-related illness continues to get smaller and smaller through Friday, and luckily, it will continue to cool down across at least the western United States, where those above normal temperatures will return out east. So enjoy the cooler temperatures out east while you can. But Texas, make sure you stay weather aware and practice heat safety. Reed, back to you.
Longtime New Jersey Representative Bill Pascrell has died at the age of 87. Voters sent him to Congress back in 1996. He became known as a fierce critic of former President Donald Trump. Pascrell hospitalized for nearly a month this summer, suffering with a respiratory infection. We have news happening just blocks away from the Democratic National Convention. A man wanted for murder caused a standoff with police. Cops got him, but they say Joshua Zimmerman escaped from a Mississippi courthouse in June. Just happened to be eating at a restaurant in Chicago when they picked him up. Our camera is also watching a Los Angeles courtroom in the next chapter in Hunter Biden's legal drama. Meeting with the judge today to weigh evidence that will be presented to that jury considering Hunter Biden's tax evasion trial. Trial starts in just a matter of weeks. Hunter Biden, by the way, entered a not guilty plea. Let's go to Arizona and Montana now over the map, where voters will decide this November whether their state constitutions will add protections for a woman's right to choose an abortion. Under both state measures, abortions would be allowed until fetal viability, defined there when a fetus could survive outside the womb, which is typically around 24 weeks. Let's jump the map now to the state of Florida and congressional primary news. You see him there with relief on his face. Voters helped Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz defeat his primary challenger. There's some rivalry here to report. Maybe you've been following this. Gaetz' Republican opponent had the backing of somebody that he famously clashed with over the months and years, former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. In November, Gaetz will now face off against Democrat Gabe Valimore. When we come back, we're going to be talking more about that rally in North Carolina. Donald Trump stepping to the mic, but this time behind bulletproof glass. We have a reporter positioned live there as we watch that rally and so much more in the world of politics. You're watching CBS News 24/7. We're watching the monitors until we come back. All right, we continue watching the waters on these monitors here behind us. This is an update on the search for passengers who went down when a yacht sunk off of the coast of Italy. So divers in the water now update the story from when we first started this broadcast. They now say they've recovered 5 bodies. 1 person is still missing. That yacht went down after a tornado flipped and sunk the vessel in just 2 minutes' time. 15 people pulled alive from the wreckage on Monday. We can also tell you dive teams in the water, they report there at the water's edge. It's tough going in the water. They only have about 12 minutes time to get underneath that water. But because of the conditions above the water and below the water, they have to come up, resurface, and regroup. We'll be watching this story closely. It will play big time in your dinner time headlines. Our video monitors also bringing us access to a North Carolina rally where former President Donald Trump will speak at his first outdoor rally since the attempted assassination in Pennsylvania. This time, and you're going to see this clearly, look for lines on the left and right-hand side of your screen. You're going to see bulletproof glass right there in front of Donald Trump. In fact, that was the case when his running mate, J.D. Vance, spoke just moments ago in Asheboro. CBS News correspondent, congressional correspondent, Scott McFarland is live in North Carolina. Okay, so Scott, we saw them behind the bulletproof glass. We on the stream were able to hear some of J.D. Vance's comments, not all. Fill in the gaps for us.
He's focusing on a military defense message, according to the campaign. J.D. Vance just did, and they say former President Trump will when he takes the stage. We're in a very heavy military area in North Carolina. It's a drive here to Camp Lejeune and to Fort Liberty, and there are huge military issues at play in this election, according to what J.D. Vance just said, making the argument to voters here that the world was more at peace when Trump was president, skipping past the fact that there were still U.S. troops in Afghanistan when Trump was president. But this is an argument the campaign wants to make today. The larger question is, what argument will Donald Trump make when he takes the stage? He has this history, this muscle memory of politically counterpunching whenever he's in front of a rally crowd, and he just got hit hard last night by former President Obama and the former First Lady Michelle Obama. Let's see what the response is from Donald Trump if he has message discipline in what's supposed to be a military defense-focused set of remarks.
All right, and we must talk about this. This is the first outdoor rally since that horrible assassination attempt in Pennsylvania that also injured and killed people and killed 1 person. What are the changes there that you're seeing today in North Carolina where that's concerned?
Some of this looks very symmetrical to what I saw July 13th. They've actually erected the U.S. flag on these diagonal cranes above the stage. It is the mirror image of how they did it in Butler, Pennsylvania. And politically, this community of Asheboro, about 90 minutes outside of Charlotte, has the same political complexion as that part of western Pennsylvania. But what sure is different inside the rally site near an aviation museum. They have the bulletproof glass that you mentioned around the podium, around the stage. And the last time I remember seeing Trump behind bulletproof glass was January 6, 2021, when he spoke at the White House Ellipse. There was a tougher security regimen for those who took their seats a little earlier than usual at the rally site. A smaller crowd than there was in Butler, but there's a lot of echoes of July 13th for those of us who were at both sites in both cities.
CBS News congressional correspondent Scott McFarland. By the way, I'm glad you got the gray suit coat memo, my friend. North Carolina and right here where we are broadcasting, we match. That's a compliment to me. Scott McFarland, thank you so much. Meantime, day 3 of the Democratic National Convention in Chicago will be the nation's chance to get to know Vice Presidential nominee Tim Walz. In fact, here's some video our crews got us letting voters know the themes that will drive tonight's broadcast. Watch.
Tonight's theme, Fight for Our Freedoms, will showcase how Vice President Harris has spent her entire career fighting for America's freedoms and why she chose Governor Walz as her running mate, including his record as a champion for America's working families and a staunch defender of our fundamental freedoms. Tonight in our program, you're going to be hearing from everyday Americans whose freedoms and livelihoods hinge on this election.
All right, CBS News' Skylar Henry talking to us now from Chicago. Skylar, we also see you got the gray suit memo, as did Scott McFarland and myself today. Truly, to our viewers, we did not plan this. But we also know tonight the theme will be protecting freedoms. Former President Bill Clinton taking to the stage tonight. What can you tell us about how that stage is set?
Yeah, that's right. Read all 50 shades of gray that we are seeing here. As for the personal freedoms, they will really sort of talk about why they feel as if the former president is a threat to those personal freedoms. And really, that is such a wide swath, if you will, in terms of a category, obviously talking about reproductive rights and the efforts from Democrats to sort of codify what they can as part of their party platform. And then there will also be conversations around the state of the economy, building out the middle class, looking out for health care costs and other areas where Democrats feel as if Republicans were to take over, then said things would be at risk, and they feel as if the former president poses an extreme agenda that could potentially take a lot of those freedoms away. It's certainly going to be another star-studded evening here in the United Center. We are expected to hear from Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi, along with several governors, high-profile governors that were at one time on that short list of potential running mates for Vice President Harris, and that includes Governor Wes Moore of Maryland. We will also hear from Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, who has been public-facing, if you will, over the course of the last 3.5 weeks, if not longer, speaking on behalf of the current administration, and also why he feels as if the Vice President and her running mate, Governor Walz, will be best fit to win the White House in November. So a long list, current opportunities, current themes that we have seen over the course of the past 3 days. A lot of momentum here, night 3 in Chicago.
We have just a few moments left, Skylar. We know that this is a chance for Tim Walz to really close the gap. CBS News polling showing a lot of people don't know a lot about the governor, as he is now on the ticket to be a vice president. What does he have to do to close that gap of understanding?
Yeah, maybe about an hour ago, we spoke with California Senator LaFonza Butler, who echoed that sentiment, saying that the governor has an opportunity tonight to really sort of introduce himself to the world, where he stands, what he comes from, and why he decided to join the vice president along this journey. In fact, the Harris-Walz campaign put out a digital blitz earlier today to the tune of some 6 figures, really sort of speaking to those students that the governor once taught, former players that the governor once coached, really sort of speaking to those sort of balanced views and opinions and sort of values that he comes from. There will also be an opportunity for the governor to clear up any sort of misunderstanding or false claims from Republicans about his military background that have made headlines over the course of the last several weeks, while also talking about his time in the U.S. Congress. A large part saying that he did quite a bit in terms of working across the aisle to get a lot of legislation done. And so I think this will be an opportunity for him, the first real test, if you will, for him to speak on the stage like this. But remember, this governor is one that is widely viewed, a lot of Democrats say, as a plain-spoken lawmaker, a plain-spoken leader. And that will be an opportunity for him to really sort of deliver something big here tonight. He is one who doesn't really follow along with teleprompters. In fact, his remarks just a couple of weeks ago when he was announced as Vice President Harris's running mate was the first real time that he has been on a teleprompter. We'll see how close to the script he sticks tonight.
All right, Skylar Henry, thank you so much for that report from Chicago. All right, to Connecticut now, where our crews watch cleanup after a historic flood in that region. Historic and deadly. In fact, a powerful and drenching storm really destroyed and damaged quite a few homes in the town of Oxford. ER nurse Randy Marcuscio lost everything inside the home.
It is hard to look at, and then I see my son. I saw my son growing up here, so it's hard because it makes me just think of our forever home and where he was supposed to be raised, and gone. It's gone. I'm okay. I'm alive. My son's alive. We didn't lose any life on the hill. My neighbors are okay. We're okay. Everything else can be replaced and fixed, or, you know, so we are okay.
Wow, a lesson in perspective. CBS News 24/7, always following the community angle of every story. We can tell you, Randy's community is rallying for her. They are donating food, trying to pull items out of the rubble there, right there, her wedding photos. They're also donating clothing and other items to make sure they're taken care of. But Zoe, threat of rain is definitely very real in this country.
Yeah, definitely going to be seeing more rain in other parts of the country, and it's kind of not super imminent, the next weather pattern that we're going to talk about. It's more fun, and it's more just out of the ordinary. We're looking at a very early season autumn storm system. A cold front will be heading towards the west coast, and that is going to bring the potential for much cooler temperatures across California, and the Sierra might see some snow as we step out later this week and into the early parts of the weekend. So let's take a closer look at that potential for snow and that storm system that we are going to be seeing. It's a large low pressure system that's currently sitting just off the Pacific Northwest coast. It will bring some gustier winds as it makes its way over the country, but the biggest impact is going to be a huge cool down in temperatures. That low pressure system, you might have noticed, is coming from the north. It's bringing in that Arctic air, and it is a cold weather storm system very early in the season, and it could potentially, with temperatures near 40 degrees or lower, bring a little bit of snow above 8,000 feet in the Sierra. So that's something that we're tracking, but not just snow, the potential for some rain and hurricane action up or down in the East Pacific. So let's take a closer look at that one, because there is going to be a lot of action down in the East Pacific. We're actually tracking 3 areas of disturbances, and you can see those 3 areas if we take a closer look just off the coast of Mexico. It's those 3 disturbances that we will continue to track as we step out over the next couple of days, and Hawaii could potentially see a little bit of that action too, something that we're going to keep our eyes on. But again, it's not an imminent threat right now, just things that we're going to continue to look at over the next couple of days. Reed.
We'll put a pin in it and watch it. Thank you so much, Zoe. Hey, when we come back, our video monitors bring you the story of drone strikes in Russia by Ukraine. CBS News 24/7 streaming coast to coast, and our eyes on worldwide news when we come back. We're watching our monitors out of the Middle East, and here's your headline. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken ending his visit to that region with no ceasefire agreement in hand. Now, the fear is that this war will escalate into even more than what it already was. CBS News foreign correspondent Remy Inocencio reports.
Reed, hi there. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is out of the region, and the negotiators for Israel and Hamas, along with the mediators from Qatar and Egypt, are now set to go back into those ceasefire talks tomorrow. Last week it was in Doha. This week it is in Cairo. And Israel and Hamas are going into this blaming each other for trying to sabotage talks. At the heart of it is a proposal from July 2nd, which the United States and the United Nations both supported. Israel says Hamas has changed conditions since then. Hamas, though, says Israel is the one that's changed conditions. So as we can see, both sides are publicly expressing their own frustrations. Privately, though, it is a valid question to ask if this is all really more posturing before those talks. Now, while that is going on, Israel's military conducted more operations overnight into Gaza and into Lebanon. In Gaza, more than 50 people died in the past day or so from Israeli strikes, including several children. That was at a market in Gaza City. From Lebanon, Hezbollah launched an estimated 50 rockets at northern Israel. One house was destroyed, but no reports of any casualties. And that was in response to Israel's attacks on Hezbollah weapons depots in the past week. So we look ahead to ceasefire talks tomorrow in Cairo. They are still on for now. Reed.
Amy, thank you so much. From one hot spot on the map to another, let's listen to this story. Russia says Ukraine has targeted Moscow in what officials say is the largest drone attack on the city in this war so far. That's Moscow, folks. These drone attacks come as Ukrainian forces are continuing to push into Russia's western Kursk region. CBS News' Ian Lee reports from Ukraine.
It's good to be with you. Overnight, Moscow experienced the largest drone attack since the fighting started in 2022. 45 in all, according to the Russian Ministry of Defense. Moscow claims it shot all of them down, but what this underscores is the increased use of drones in warfare. Kyiv has been able to strike deep into Russia, targeting strategic sites, as well as use them effectively on the battlefield. I spoke with the commander yesterday who is taking part in the Kursk operation. He explained how they help his troops find and kill their enemy, as well as keep his men safe. He also talked about how this offensive changed the mood for his men, calling them upbeat, and he feels confident that they can still take more ground as well as conduct similar operations in the future. what surprised him was to find 18, 19-year-old conscripts guarding the border and not hardened professionals, and that's one of the reasons they've been so successful. He also praised the U.S.-led NATO training they've received, saying it's opened their eyes to a new way of fighting, which involves speed, aggression, and maneuvering. He talked about how the American mine-clearing vehicles played such a crucial role in the beginning of that incursion, clearing the way past the border, but he says what they need now is more armored personnel carriers as well as counter-battery equipment to target Russia's long-range weapons. Something else he's starting to see is Russian soldiers who've been fighting in the eastern part of Ukraine being redeployed to the Kursk region. And that's important for Kyiv as Ukraine continues to lose ground on that front. What's interesting, though, is that the commander says that those battle-hardened soldiers don't know how to fight a war of speed and maneuver. So he says that they are more timid when it comes to confronting the Ukrainians. Vlad?
Now let's go live to Dallas on this Wednesday morning, and we're going to see what's happening there. Heat is definitely bearing down on many parts of Texas. We can tell you it's a hot one there in Dallas, and Zoe is here. Zoe, with that heat, nobody really feels it more than the people who are homeless.
Unfortunately, there's just no relief, even with the overnight lows. It is still extremely hot out there. Widespread records going to be broken. In fact, likely going to be over 13 dozen records that are going to be broken today across Texas. Texas, as you can see, it's the big bullseye when it comes to the heat, and lots of issues are created by the heat. Places like Austin, Texas, San Antonio, those temperatures are going to be upwards of 105 degrees. Looks like San Antonio, 106. Austin might get up to 107. Those would be record-breaking for this time of year, and it even extends out to the desert Southwest too. Places like Albuquerque, New Mexico, 98 degrees as a forecast high. That would tie their old record. Might even get to 99 or 100 though. Let's take a closer look at the risk for heat-related illness, because that is going to be the biggest issue when it comes to excessive heat all across Texas. It's the risk for people that spend time outdoors, where we are looking at all the way from the desert Southwest to the central parts of Texas, and even over closer to the coast like Austin and San Antonio, like we were talking about. Those are going to be our biggest issues, but there is some good news on the way. We likely are going to be seeing that area of the highest heat-related illness shrinking over the next couple of days. We'll continue to see Thursday lower and lower, Friday even lower, and that area where that highest risk for heat-related illness is will continue to shrink into this weekend. So there is good news on the way, but you need to practice heat safety over the next couple of days where things are going to be very hot. Light, loose-fitting clothing, lots of sunscreen, lots of water, and taking breaks in the shade are going to be the top priority for people that do live in Texas. So that's going to be top of mind, and I know, Reed, a lot of people out there are struggling with that heat. Hopefully they can find ways to stay cool and beat the heat. But unfortunately, with this kind of heat, there's just no way to do that unless you go inside somewhere.
That's right. We're going to be talking about the plight of some of those people. We're talking about UPS drivers in Texas. Right now, they're protesting, and you know what they want? Air conditioning. In fact, take a look at how CBS News Texas covers their protest. Watch.
UPS drivers wanting relief from the heat are protesting right now for better safety standards. This after a UPS driver passed out behind the wheel of his unair-conditioned truck. It was video we showed you last week. The Teamsters union that represents the driver says he fell unconscious due to heat exhaustion. Our Lacey Beasley joins us now live from the UPS hub in McKinney, where that protest is happening. And Lacey, I understand you've been talking with some of the folks out there. What are they telling you?
Yeah, that's right, Karen. Now, the protest seems to have quieted down in the past hour, but we talked to people who were protesting as a part of the union and people from the community who live nearby and wanted to come out and show their support. Now, here's video of what the protest looked like earlier this morning. Dozens offering support with signs saying UPS agreed AC. Where is it? Teamsters Local 767 did say they met with UPS yesterday to talk about what they can do better to prevent this from happening again. Now, I got done talking with a current UPS driver who gave me more detail into the most recent contract negotiation with UPS, which started last summer and lasts for 5 years.
With the new contract, what they promised was that every new vehicle that they buy will have AC in them.
I have 10 years left before I retire. If I see one, I would be kind of surprised.
Currently, right now, we send out over 2,000 vehicles out on the road in Local 767's jurisdiction, and not one of our vehicles have AC in them. Our brothers and sisters have got to go out and hit the pavement every day to service the community. We're just asking UPS to do their part and put some AC in this jurisdiction.
Now, this protest coming on the heels of a UPS driver who crashed last week. The union says the driver notified a manager he was vomiting and feeling sick from the heat, though they say the manager still asked him to drive the truck back to a facility several hours away from McKinney to Longview, which breaks UPS protocol when 911 should have been called. UPS sending us a statement in response to this incident saying, quote, the agreement with the Teamsters included equipping all new vehicles purchased after January 1 with AC and making modifications to our existing package cars to improve airflow, temperature, and comfort for our drivers. We have hundreds of vehicles with AC operating on the roads today, and will continue to purchase and deploy new vehicles with AC as quickly as possible. Now, we did confirm here that this driver is fairly new to the company, and his truck did not have AC. Karen?
All right, Lacey Beasley reporting live for us this morning. Thank you very much, Lacey.
Always love dipping into what our CBS partners are doing in other states. Well, that's it for us at CBS News 24/7. We leave you with live pictures out of Asheboro, North Carolina. You see the podium there? That's bulletproof glass. Vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance just spoke to people at a rally. Soon, former President Donald Trump will also appeal to voters. We're watching that on the stream. And also, we're watching what's happening in Chicago. We understand major speakers will be taking to the stage. Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi, and also the nation getting a chance to hear from the vice presidential nominee, Tim Walz. He will tell his story tonight from that stage as CBS News awaits a debate between Walz and his opponent, J.D. Vance, October 1st. Thank you for watching this hour of CBS News 24/7. We are here day in and day out, watching our monitors and bringing it to you.